What's going on, everyone? About 63% of the S&P 500 closed down in the red today, and Tesla and Google earnings are now out. So we're going to dive deep into those earnings reports, but we also have some pretty exciting and good news for traders coming up pretty soon here. So stick around for that, and besides that, Tom, let's jump right into today's episode.
Yeah, the overall market today didn't really do too much. You can see it chopped around kind of like yesterday. That's very similar price action. Like it tried to move a little higher and then overall just really couldn't get that big breakout going. Ended up closing actually down a little bit in the red today, down 0.16%. But I know that everybody out there really just wants to hear about Tesla right now. They reported deliveries a couple weeks ago, and those deliveries weren't, they weren't great, but they were pretty good, right? Tesla stock started shooting up a little bit. Now with earnings, they're actually falling down to the downside ever so slightly as we're actually starting to see revenue rise 2%. And whenever I look at the revenue, they beat ever so slightly. The EPS ended up missing, but the things that really struck me, Mike, was their automotive sales dropping 7%. That's not a good thing to hear, especially whenever you hear that rival automakers saw a 33% year-over-year jump in their own sales. So I just feel like that's a pretty bad thing to hear, that they're jumping like 33% in the time frame. Tesla's sales are dropping by 9.6%. So overall, I feel like that's pretty good earnings by Tesla. Obviously, the EPS miss is not that good to see, but they've been trying to turn things around, and I think that their stock overall really does show that over the past couple months.
When we look at Tesla stock, it's at a pretty interesting point as it is selling off in after hours, and it's been running to the upside in a pretty strong way over the past couple weeks. The way I look at Tesla right now is to approach it, and you could say a non-biased perspective, and if we start to see Tesla truly, let's say, sell off to the downside, I would definitely consider playing that move lower. But at the same time, if the stock starts to show a lot of strength tomorrow, I would be as equally as happy to ride the momentum up. I just feel like Tesla's at a point right now where it certainly doesn't have a ton of optimism, but at the same time, it isn't like overly pessimistic either. It's like at this like weird like no man's land, and I'm just waiting for it to see like a good move in either direction before actually playing this one. But either way, I'm going to continue to watch Tesla closely as always tomorrow. But again, I'm looking for some real movement with this one that we're kind of yet to see.
Yeah, and I mean, in after hours tonight, there could have been a good opportunity to play it down. Like, obviously we couldn't play it because the market was closed, but like if the market was open, we could have had a decent opportunity there. This morning, we saw Tesla drop off a little bit into this event as well. So, we've been seeing some like short-term opportunities with Tesla. I actually was really loving that price action from a couple weeks ago where Tesla started shooting up like with those delivery numbers and etc. I thought it was really good to see them get some good optimism coming back after that huge dip they were having, because Mike, as we all say, at the time of peak fear, that's usually a good time to buy, right? Whenever Tesla was down here, I remember everybody was calling for bankruptcy again and stuff. I know people start to freak out quite a bit whenever these stocks get pretty low, but right now Tesla is holding up. In the short term, I am watching a support here right around $230. That's going to be huge, I think, over the next couple days. So if that gives out, I'll keep looking at Tesla to the downside. But for tomorrow, I'm definitely going to have that support in the back of my mind.
Sounds good. And then 230 was also a giant level on Bookmap as well.
Yeah, it really was. There was 127,000 shares stacked up there today, and there was actually a lot of support and resistance and just a lot of buyers and sellers in general around like where the price was today, 244 to 250, but you can see that 230 is the next major level below everything here. So in after hours, definitely keep your eyes on 230 and in pre-market tomorrow. If that starts to give out, it's definitely going to be a big spot to watch. And Mike, I know that, we watch these levels a lot, so shout out the Bookmap here coming in clutch with Tesla. I was really looking at some big supports here in after hours, and I was like, yeah, 230 looks pretty big, went right over there. Really helps to confirm these levels like this.
You know it. And while Tesla's kind of slow in after hours today, Google certainly is not. So Google actually reported earnings as well. They beat on their profit expectations as well as their revenue expectations, and their revenue is actually up 14% year over year. So this is pretty good to see. Looking at Google in after hours, again, they were powering higher, and overall, Tom, their earnings definitely weren't bad.
Yeah, it really wasn't. The only negative thing that I really saw was that their YouTube revenue missed slightly, right? And I saw that they put that huge in the headline with CNBC. They're like, oh, it meets expectations, but misses on ad revenue. I'm like, really? Like, you're going to talk about that slight miss like it's so bad whenever they beat on everything else pretty much? Like, I don't know. But I thought that overall their earnings report was really good, and I'm really glad to see that the stock is having a fairly positive reaction. I will say it's been fairly volatile so far, but overall it's holding up pretty well, like around this 185 mark. So we'll have to see where it opens tomorrow. It's not going to be like the biggest gainer in the world, it doesn't look like right now, but overall really solid numbers by, one of the biggest companies in the world.
No doubt. And whether you're looking at Google or Tesla or any other earnings report over the next week, it'll be important to keep in mind how to trade these stocks in the smartest way possible. Looking at this week's earnings calendar, we could see that there are a whole bunch of companies set to report. And one prime example that I would love to use is actually UPS from this morning. This stock got obliterated today as it fell by 12%, and that's after the increase or bounce it has had since the middle of the day. But what's worth noting is that once these stocks report earnings, it's not like they're just done moving from that point. A lot of times we actually see really strong earnings continuations where the stock has an initial move right after the earnings report came out, but it also has like a follow-up move after. UPS, while it had a giant move in after hours today, it also had a very well-respected move once the market already opened, and some of the options on this one moved up well over 100% after the market already opened. So again, keep a close eye on Tesla, Google, and all of the other earnings stocks throughout the week, because again, there's also a lot of opportunity playing the move after, and a lot of times it's even less risky, and you can even get some better setups.
Yeah, and I know this morning I did a poll on the live stream, and a lot of people voted that they were actually playing Tesla earnings. Let us know in the comments if you guys played them and how they go. Obviously, we don't really condone playing earnings too often. It's pretty risky, So we definitely like to say to play the moves after most of the time. Sometimes people like to play the moves ahead of the earnings too, and that can be okay. But the moves after are definitely my favorite things to do, Mike. And UPS is a good example. We even saw some weird movement with Netflix lately after their earnings too. Like if we look at the 5-minute chart, you can see how they had some pretty good movement the next day. They ended up running up quite a bit that morning, and from the high of day there to the low, that ended up being a crazy drop off, like 7%. Imagine the options during that time there. So yeah, just stay adaptable in the short term and just watch these stocks very, very closely. And talking about the earnings calendar, Mike, we might as well get into the rest of these stocks for the week. Tomorrow morning, we have AT&T reporting, NextEra Energy, Vertiv. Wednesday and after hours, we have Chipotle, Ford, ServiceNow, IBM, and Las Vegas Sands. Even some other ones like Newmont, NEM, which we've talked about quite a bit lately as well, tomorrow in after hours, just in case anybody's holding it.
Sounds good. But Tom, we actually have some pretty good news for traders right now, and that has specifically to do with the options market. So looking at this chart here, we could see two lines and a lot of confusing terminology, but essentially what we're seeing is the volatility of the market, or the S&P 500, over time. The black line represents the volatility that has actually happened, or the realized volatility, while the red line represents the volatility that is expected of market makers. Essentially what we're seeing right now is not only very low volatility, but we're also seeing a very wide gap in between what the market has expected in terms of volatility and what the market has actually produced. And what's cool is that whenever we have seen giant discrepancies from the implied volatility to the realized volatility in the past, of course, those differences converge and they eventually get closer to each other. Now, what's cool in this scenario is that either situation one, where the implied volatility will come down to close that gap. In that case, options prices will be much cheaper going forward. And in option two, we have the realized volatility, or the black line, that would be set to come up, which in that case would make for a much more exciting, momentum-filled environment, unlike what we saw over the past couple of trading days. So the main thing to know is that volatility is at a pretty exciting point where not only is it cheap, like in the grand scheme of things, but it's also set to get a little bit more advantageous for traders over these next couple days and weeks. So that's something to look forward to. And of course, Tom, this is also happening as, we have this giant earnings week on the schedule as well, and then also a giant earnings week next week.
Yeah, exactly. This is the biggest earnings week, of the season, right? And we're in week 3 right now. Week 4 is another huge one, pretty much tying it with like the percentage of earnings by the sector there. We've looked at this chart this week already, but it just shows that, we are in one of the biggest earnings week of this earnings season. So definitely be ready for that. I just want to throw up the chart one more time, maybe screenshot it if you guys want to see some of these stocks later in the week, like, RTX, American Airlines, and etc. But overall, Mike, it's going to be a crazy week. And, I like how we're looking at the volatility like this. We've been looking at the VIX. It's been getting pretty crazy in the short term. The VIX was actually stuck in this range for a couple months, and we started to finally see some good price action over the past like 4 to 5 days. So I'm still watching the VIX closely. It's falling back towards support, and, we might see some more volatility in the short term with all these earnings causing these wild moves here.
Sounds good. So while earnings is definitely the star of the show right now, we still do have a handful of economic data reports for the week, but they'll mainly come in on Thursday and Friday with some GDP data, some PCE data, and some personal income and personal spending. But honestly, these events aren't all that crazy, so we'll talk about them more later in the week. But let's get right into the good stuff for today, which are some setups for tomorrow. A stock I'm watching very closely right now is Zoom, and this is a stock that has certainly fallen from the heavens. The stock is below $60 a share, and way back back in 2020, the stock was the stock was at one point trading for just under $600 a share. So it has had a rough past couple of years, to say the least. But basically what we are seeing in the short term with this one is a good amount of buying pressure stepping in as the stock is getting to some seriously low levels, but we're also to the point where we're seeing Zoom pop up on an intraday basis where it's kind of like outperforming some of the momentum we're seeing in other areas of the market. And I think this goes hand in hand with the broader concept that we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks, where we're seeing some money slowly shift out of the big, I guess you could say big tech stocks, but also big stocks that have already increased so much over the past year, and it's flowing into some other stocks that, again, have been a little bit slower to move. Either way, this definitely benefits Zoom, and I think it says a lot how the stock has been actively increasing for the past couple of weeks now. Either way, Zoom is going to continue to be on my upside radar going forward. I feel like it is at such a depressed level, and now that we're starting to see more buying pressure actively step in, I feel like that could be like the spark that eventually ends up lighting the fiery uptrend on this one.
Yeah, I really do like Zoom in the short term myself, Mike. I like this support down here around the bottom, right around $56 in the short term. Looking pretty good even for the long term. It's at the lowest point it's been at in a while. I will say, guys, this stock is so low, it's hard to even look at on the chart. Whenever you zoom in, the price action starts jumping so crazily because it's just, you don't get stocks that move like that all the time besides some of these select COVID stocks, but I'm definitely going to watch it in the short term. Zoom does look pretty good. It's one of those stocks that we're seeing some good inflows into. One stock that we haven't talked about in a little while is DraftKings, Mike. Today they had a really good day, up 2.55%. They've been dipping over the past, I'd say 5 to 7 days, but over the past 2 days, they've been starting to base off of support and come back up quite well here. So I'm going to be looking for a nice breakout tomorrow, right above $38, and I'll be looking for a push towards 39 and then 40 over the next couple days. So that's what I'm looking at with DraftKings. It's been a while since we've talked about them, Mike, and they've been dipping quite a bit lately, but they're starting to see some pretty good inflows, at least today and in the short term.
There we go. Another stock I'm watching pretty closely right now is Coinbase, and as many people already know, it is pretty closely tied to the cryptocurrency industry as a whole. So starting off with Bitcoin, we can see that it is still at a pretty high level, but it is really struggling around this like $68,000 mark, and it has also been making continuous lower highs. We can see that it topped out right around like $74,000 back in March of this year, and ever since that point, each high that it has made has been lower than the previous one, which is not a good thing to see, historically speaking. So either way, we're seeing a decent amount of selling pressure with Bitcoin. Nothing too alarming, but it's certainly not great. And as we look at Coinbase, it is also at a pretty crucial resistance level, right around like $270 a share. And again, it's also in that like lower high formation. Either way, looking at Coinbase right now, the selling pressure was pretty strong today, and it couldn't even sustain the uptrend that it had closer to open. There are a handful of strong resistance levels overhead, and I think that makes for a good reward to risk skew with this one to the downside in the short term. I would love to see this break below the $255 level and put continuous pressure on its lows, and assuming that happens, I think it could make for a pretty good bearish play in the short term.
Yeah, I do too. I really do like Coinbase in the short term. There's been a lot of good price action here. I know that it's been moving up quite a bit lately, and I would not be surprised to see it pull back. You know, I did like the way it closed today, down under those resistances. I thought that was a really good sign to the downside here in the short term. So I'll definitely have Coinbase on my radar in the short term as well. And Mike, I'm looking at Meta again. I was looking at this one yesterday, and it was basing right around that 490 to 493 mark. We talked about that. We brought up the book map and showed all the levels yesterday with it, and it really failed to break out above there. So I'm still watching Meta in the short term. I want to see it break back down below the lows of yesterday, which is right around the 483.90 to 484 support. So if we get under that support, I'll keep watching Meta down. Again, it will help to see the overall market have some more downside selling pressure as well, and just to see tech continue to show short-term weakness. But I didn't necessarily love the breakout today. You know, some of these stocks tried to move up this morning, and many of them had some pretty rough closes.
Sounds good. All right, well, let's get right into today's momentum plays. And with the first one, we have GLD to the upside.
Yeah, gold actually had a pretty good move today, and in the short term, they're basing off of support. If they can break out above 223, then watch them up.
All right, with the next one, we have Teladoc also to the upside.
Teladoc, this is one of those stocks that could get pretty wild if we start to see some outflows with SPY. They have a strong negative correlation, as you can see in the bottom right. But if they end up breaking above 940, watch them to the upside tomorrow.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Amazon for both directions.
Yeah, ticker symbol AMZN. They were pretty surprising today as they ran up quite a bit. If they're able to break above this high of day right around 189.50, then watch them to the upside. Now, if they break back under the key 185 support now, then watch them back down.
All right, so we have that downside level for a potential move lower, and then we have the upside level for a potential move higher, and this is for Amazon. Don't forget about the upside levels with TDOC and GLD as well, but basically with momentum plays, we are looking for strong, powerful, consistent price action. Basically, if these stocks break through the levels Tom listed, we are looking for potential continuations in those directions, but if the stocks do not break the levels listed, then do not force the trades. But besides that, Tom, we are all clear for today's $300,000 big money trade, and we are looking at ticker symbol ALK. So this is Alaska Air Group, and basically the big money is betting bullish with this one as they put $300,000 into some calls. And this is going to sound a little bit complicated just for a second, but basically the big money bought the $42.50 strike call options, and at the same time shorted the 50 strike call options, both of which expiring on September 20th of 2024. They put $300,000 into this trade. One reason I like trades like this one more than the average big money trade is because whenever you have a spread trade, which is what this is, it gives us a much clearer view of exactly what the big money's doing. There are some technical reasons for this, but basically we know the big money's bullish on this stock. The higher it goes, the more they'll make. Their profit will max out at that $50 area. But if you don't want to have to deal with trading the spread, you could follow the $42.50 strike call options, and it will be a very similar setup. But looking at this stock, it has been making continuous higher lows over the past year or so, and it's at an interesting point where it's like the stock is trying to hold up, but it hasn't gotten like all of that momentum just yet, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because if this stock was just ripping to the upside, the call options wouldn't be as good, as greatly priced as they are now. So either way, keep a close eye on this one going forward. And I don't know if we've ever had a big money trade with this stock, Tom.
Yeah, I don't think that we have. Alaska Air Group, it's a very interesting stock. Obviously, it's in the airline sector for anyone that doesn't know. I'm sure people caught on by now, but nonetheless, it is a pretty good pretty crazy stock, right? It's a fun stock to trade sometimes. I've traded shares on this one in the past. Now, it's been a long time since I have. Since COVID, this stock has actually been pretty wild. But whenever they start to go on some pretty big moves, the runs can be pretty exponential. And looking at this dip here, looks like they're forming some pretty good support. So overall, I think it's a pretty good play by the big money. It's not the biggest one that we've ever seen, around $300,000 in this one. But nonetheless, it's a very fun stock that has a lot of potential, and I do like this stock in the short term, Mike. They do have, this does go out to September, so there's still around like 2 months of time onto this, but whenever we talk about stop losses here, like maybe something under 37 could be pretty good, right under that recent dip, or even under that recent low right around 35 could be pretty good. But obviously calculate your risk according to how much options you're buying and etc.
All right, well, sounds good there. Keep a close eye on this one going forward. But for those of you who've been following us for some time, tonight is the night where we are wrapping up the coupon code for the StockedUp trading floor. For those of you who don't know, the StockedUp trading floor is the place to be when it comes to short-term trading. You get access to all of our custom bots that has taken us years and a whole bunch of money to make. You get access to the big money trades every single day before they are released in the video, which oftentimes make for better entry prices. You can chat with Tom and myself all day long, join our weekly live events, and get access to, again, basically everything you need when it comes to short-term trading. Today was a great day, not only in terms of hybrid bot, but especially SM bot, where it had some Boeing call options that popped up by 256%, as well as some Amazon call options that popped up by 163%. The coupon code Big Money with the yearly plan saves more than any other coupon that we do. So if you want in, now's the time. It is today's the last day to get the deal. So definitely check it out with the first link in the description in the comments down below. But Tom, while you're in the Discord, let's give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, Lojals, that actually showed a great post with Spy and then also Hybrid Bot where they crushed it with GM. So great stuff there, and keep on rolling. You've only been in the community for a couple weeks now, but you've been a great member, so keep it up. Besides that, thank you all so much for watching. We have a pretty exciting earnings week ahead of us, so I have no doubt that volatility will pick up soon. But let's make this week a great one, and thank you for watching.